and welcome to Ryvis Rambles, where I talk about whatever the I want. And in this video, I want to talk about The Whale. The Whale is a movie about an obese man who tries to reconnect with his teenage daughter, whom he abandoned 8 years ago for a newfound love. I will talk about eating disorder in this video, so if this topic triggers you, consider yourself warned. This movie certainly was triggering for me, so I might get a bit emotional myself. I will also talk about spoilers, so if you haven't watched the movie yet, why? Just kidding. Maybe I should learn to talk about plot without spoilers, but I honestly don't know what counts as spoiler anymore, so proceed at your own risk or come back later. And if you're only interested in my opinion, you can jump to this part. Charlie's an English professor for literature, I think, and teaches exclusively online. Classes are video calls, but his camera is switched off and he claims it's broken, when in truth he's too ashamed to show himself. It basically starts with him jerking off to porn after classes, which certainly is one way to introduce a character's sexuality. While he's jerking off, he almost has a heart attack and gets a visit from a missionary from New Life Church called Thomas, who let himself in. Charlie has Thomas read an essay to him since he's certain he's dying and wants to hear it one last time. But he survives. Liz, who's a nurse and his only friend, regularly visits him to check up on him and his health since he has no health insurance and refuses to go to the hospital or get any kind of treatment. The twist is, due to his untreated obesity, he has congestive heart failure and will soon die if he doesn't go to the hospital. He doesn't really care about that, and I will talk a bit more about this later. This is very rightfully frustrated, and all Charlie can do is apologize, which obviously doesn't help the situation, and I'll get back to this as well. His daughter Ellie visits him on his request. Since he's certain he'll die, he wants to reconnect with her. She's ruthless, but that's the pain and anger at her father's abandonment speaking. They haven't seen each other in 8 years, and Charlie wants to get to know her, but she has no interest. He offers to pay her for her time, and she agrees on the condition that he does her homework. Charlie has left his wife Mary and his daughter for one of his college students he fell in love with. We later learn that the student's name was Alan and that he was Liz's brother. However, due to religious guilt, Alan killed himself for being gay.
Fell in love, started a whole new life, and Dad kicked him out of the church. I thought he was going to be able to get over all that religious stuff, but it was like a cancer. He couldn't shake it. One night, he doesn't come home. A couple weeks later, this guy's out jogging on a bike path near the river in Lewiston, sees something washed up on shore, and that was Alan.
The loss of his partner is the reason for Charlie's obesity. Then there's pizza delivery guy Dan. They only talk through the door, and Dan seems to show care until one day when he stays behind and sees Charlie. His reaction is, well, not good. After another bout of binge eating, triggered by Dan's reaction, Thomas visits Charlie one last time, telling him that he can return home. We learned that he left his church while he was on a mission, questioning whether what they did was spreading the message at all, because they were only handing out pamphlets while he wanted to go from door to door. He then ran away with the ministry's money. Thanks to Ellie, who took a pic of him smoking weed and sending it to his family reaches out to Thomas and wants him to come home, which to Charlie means that Ellie isn't as evil as her mother Mary claims her to be. Because thanks to Ellie's mean action, the family is reunited. However, his joyful moment is ruined when Thomas straight up tells Charlie that Alan died because he chose to be with Charlie, which is a sin. Thomas sincerely thinks he's helping Charlie, but Charlie doesn't approve of his help and the assumption that Alan died because of his sexuality. He then sends Thomas home. The next day, he finally shows himself to his class and then destroys his laptop since he's about to die anyway, I guess. Ellie barges in because she wants to talk to Charlie. She confronts him about the essay he wrote in her stead, and it turns out it's the one she wrote when she was younger, about 4 years ago. The same one Charlie kept on repeating when he thought he was dying, because it's the last thing he wanted to hear before he kicked the bucket. The movie ends with Charlie walking towards Ellie while she reads the essay to him and him dying. This section is going to be a bit longer because I have a lot to say, and not just about the movie. The Whale is one of the best movies I've seen in a while. It's well written and authentic. It's a perfect example of show, don't tell. The whole movie plays in one room, there's no exposition and no flashbacks, the only exception being Charlie's happy memory by the beach at the end. We learn everything we need to know through dialogue and the characters' interactions. The movie deals with a ton of topics. We have homosexuality, obesity, religion, abandonment, judgmental society, and a cycle of hate and self-hate. I'm not sure if 2 hours is enough to deeply explore all of these topics, but it's certainly enough for a character portrait, which is what we basically have with Charlie. The whale moved my heart so much I almost cried throughout the whole movie. My only issue with the movie is that this very emotional scene,
I need to know that I have done one thing right with my life,
would have had more impact if it hadn't been shown in the trailer. Due to that, the scene didn't touch me as deeply as it could have, I think. At least Charlie gets his catharsis before he actually dies, as he gets to say sorry and bye and all. The end is just a tiny bit weird, and I'm also not sure how much of that is actually happening and how much is just him being delusional since he's on the brink of dying. The movie has a very limited cast, but there are only 3 characters I really want to talk about. Them being Liz, Ellie, and of course, Charlie. I will talk about Charlie last because a lot of my analysis of him overlaps with my own experience. That's why I'm starting with Liz. Liz is the best friend a person could have. She's a tough cookie and a competent nurse, but not unaffected by her brother's death or the fact that her friend Charlie is dying. And while she isn't mincing matters, straight up telling Charlie that he's gonna die, she still has a soft spot for him. Also, when Liz learns that Charlie technically has enough money for the hospital, she gets super upset at him because she sacrificed so much for him because she thought he didn't have any money.
Charlie doesn't have any money.
She doesn't know?
Mary.
Where do you think all the money from his teaching has been going? Over 100,000 at least, right?
That's not true, is it? We could have gotten you anything you needed. Special beds, physical therapists, fucking health insurance. Last winter when my pickup broke down and I had to walk through the snow to get your groceries for you.
I offered to get your truck fixed.
Yeah, and I refused because I thought you had $700 in your bank account.
And yet, despite the feeling of betrayal, she comes back to check up on him and stays by his side and is saddened by his imminent death. What I didn't like about her, or what I don't like in general, is when people generalize. Of course she's upset at New Life Church because essentially it was religion that took her brother from her. But showing contempt against everyone who's from that church, in that case Thomas, wasn't really justified in my opinion. Until he starts preaching and blaming Alan's death on his homosexuality. That's when I agreed with her. It would have been nice to see kind of character development in a homophobe religious person by showing acceptance, emphasis on homophobe, but then again it was supposed to reflect reality, so... Ellie acting out, rebelling, and being on suspension are all signs of a hurt teenager. Same with the stuff she throws at Charlie. Much of the things she says are confirmation for his beliefs of being worthless and disgusting. But she clarifies that it's not only his appearance that's disgusting, but his character. Basically, because he was a shit dad who abandoned his family for someone else. Of course he could have shown up for her, but apparently her mother didn't want him, not her. But apparently her mother didn't want him to be in her life, so it wasn't that easy. So in that sense, even though the things she said are brutal, she's not wrong. Anyway, Ellie was the most relatable to me when she talked about poem analysis.
You think just because I'm not losing my shit over the poem, it's because I didn't read it. I did read it. It's overwritten and dumb and repetitive, and even though he thinks his metaphor of I is deep, it's actually just a bunch of bullshit.
Okay, now, Charlie. There are several points I want to talk about. The first is about him apologizing all the time. Since he already has such a poor image of himself, he has no fight left in him. So when someone gets angry at him, he naturally buckles, because he believes they're right, that he essentially is to blame for everything. He also wants Ellie to direct all her anger at him because that's what he believes he deserves. I mean, in that case, it actually is his fault, but even if it wasn't, he'd take the blame because he thinks he isn't worth anything anyway. He's a burden, undeserving of love and respect. The next point is about him not going to the hospital. Now, I know that it's kinda selfish, because it'll cause pain for the few people that care about him. But I also get why he refuses. Not only is there a huge obstacle called shame, but also the fact that he literally doesn't care if he dies. He probably just sees himself as a waste of space and would do the world a huge favor if he just disappeared. And this theme of Charlie believing he's disgusting is a recurring one, which gets confirmed over and over again. When Ellie bluntly tells him, the reaction of pizza delivery guy Dan when he sees him for the first time, when his class sees him for the first time, and when he straight up asks Thomas and gets the answer he wants after literally driving him into a corner. Now, the smart people among you could be saying, then why doesn't he just lose weight? Oh boy, let me tell you, it ain't that easy. Aside from the fact that he's reached a point where he literally can't lose weight without help, which again plays into the shame factor of not being able to accept or seek out help, he simply can't stop eating because it's literally an addiction. On the one hand, it probably serves as comfort because he keeps on eating after choking, for example, and on the other hand, he uses it as punishment. After Dan's reaction, Charlie's response is to binge eat, and he's doing this to hurt himself because that's what he thinks he deserves for looking the way he does, since that's what people already expect, that he eats an unhealthy amount of food, so he might as well give into it. I mean, I obviously don't know how the character feels or if this is what the movie's implying. I'm just projecting my own thoughts and feelings onto him, which leads me to my own experience. What I'm about to say is certainly true for many aspects in life, but I will focus on obesity because that's what the movie is about. I feel everyone should be able to express themselves however they want and feel comfortable in their own skin, as long as it's not hurting anyone. Whether it's healthy or not is a completely different story. Also, when I say not hurting anyone, I include that person as well. But where do we draw the line? Getting tattoos and piercings can also hurt, so in the end, it's their body and their choice. Of course, obesity isn't healthy, but it shouldn't be shamed. I shouldn't feel ashamed to go out. I shouldn't feel ashamed to show my body. Even if it's unhealthy, being seen as an abomination doesn't make it easier to seek out help. Because you don't feel like you deserve help. You don't deserve to be taken seriously. You don't deserve to feel good. You don't deserve to exist. Just like with mental health back then, and sometimes even now, due to the stigma around it, people prefer to hide their illness instead of seeking treatment. And I feel the same way about obesity. Due to the shame, I don't want to get help, I want to hide.
Who would want me to be a part of their life?
Now, if you already think that people perceive you negatively, there's a certain expectation of how people might react to you that might skew your own perspective. However, it's the result of accumulated experience of being jeered at. To be fair, there are people who care about us. In Charlie's case, it's Liz and Mary, and in a weird sense, maybe even Thomas. So he could just focus on them, on the positive. Right? Wrong. Disgust against obese people is so deeply ingrained in us. I witness it with some of my friends all the time. They judge a person when they're overweight, even in my presence, because of course they wouldn't talk about me like that because they love me. But knowing that my friends judge strangers like that only goes to show that other strangers might judge me just as harshly. The thing that rubs me the wrong way about such judgmental people is that they don't see what we're struggling with. They only judge the surface. They don't care about context or background, which leads to this endless cycle of shame and self-hatred. Of course you could ask, why do you care about what people think of you at all? Well, let me tell you. It's really hard not to care because that's how the human brain works. We want validation. We want to belong. We want to be accepted. If we're not, it's only natural to feel like we have to hide, or better yet, disappear from this world. And honestly, mainstream media doesn't help either. We sadly live in a society that thrives on people feeling bad about themselves. We are shown unattainable ideals, and anyone who does not conform to the ideal is discriminated against by others who also do not conform to this ideal but are closer to it. And this is true for beauty, status, wealth, and health, among other things. We need to put an end to this perpetual cycle of internalized self-hatred and discrimination. To finish off this section, I want to recommend D'Angelo Wallace's video about Ozempics. He talks about body neutrality and debunks some of the most common phrases used by people to hide their fat phobia under the guise of concern. Go check it out, link is in the description. To sum it up, this movie had me bawling my eyes out because I could absolutely relate. But I honestly don't believe that anyone who isn't or ever was in that position will ever understand. We obviously shouldn't glorify or romanticize obesity, but people shouldn't feel bad about existing either. Personally, I don't believe in the concept of beauty or ugliness, but in the concept of aesthetic and personal preference. What's the difference? Easy. Beauty basically is what we're supposed to look like. It's objective. The problem is, there is no one fits all. An aesthetic basically is personal preference, which means just because I like something doesn't mean everyone will like it, and that's okay. And if any one of you comes around the corner with but it's called survival of the fittest, shut the fuck up. Beauty attracts people like a lantern attracts moth, but personality is what makes them stay. No shade against conventionally pretty people. I just believe that, broadly speaking, every person with a good personality is beautiful in their own way. Now we should stop judging by the outside alone. I don't have a smart question for today. If you've seen the movie, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If listening to random people talking about random stuff on the internet appeals to you, leave a like and subscribe. And if you have any topic you'd like to hear me ramble about, leave a suggestion in a comment below. Thanks so much for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye bye!